in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Carol Mahoney. She is the Chief People Officer at Gainsight. Carol, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for folks who are listening, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh, I love that question. So I am she, her, and I'm Carol Mahoney. I am the Chief People Officer at Gainsight, and I wanted to be lots of things at different points of my life. So I guess I would say I went everything from circus performer to lawyer, but I'll just say that the one that always sticks with me is I wanted to be in the circus, and I wanted to be a circus performer. And I used to hang out and pretend like I was doing performances. And I would wait for some sort of a scout to find me because I thought I was going to be famous and picked up in the circus. That was my dream.
I love it. That's super creative. And also, I just think it's interesting, like where we thought we would be and just the dreams and perceptions we had. Fast forward to today, you are a Chief People Officer, you're at Gainsight. And I know that historically folks have had kind of perceptions around human resources teams, people teams. How have you kind of seen these perceptions change over time?
So I think there's two things that come to mind for me when you ask that question. The first is the perceptions of ourselves have changed. So sometimes when you change the perception of yourself, the perception of others follows. So as an example, I personally went from thinking of myself as a business partner only to actually being a human first connection to the business. That is a big perception change. I developed my persona as I am a business person. I am here to help with the business, and I really forgot the people part of the people team. And when I reimagined myself as someone that connects to human beings and that brought humanity to the business, it was very freeing, and it did change the perception in the workplace of what HR really is. I never wanted to be that person that was the gendarme and, telling people you can do this, you can't do that. That just didn't appeal to me. Also, however, I am a woman, and maybe not obviously, but as I said, I'm she, her. And growing up as a woman in HR, I learned quite a bit about what it's like to be a madman wife, because it felt often like I was there to serve men. And I had to really come to terms with that and realize that that wasn't appropriate. And to an extent, because so many women are in HR, I think the perception can stick with us. And so it's something I have to be very mindful of, that I am not there to serve, I'm a partner, and I expect to be treated as such.
I love that. I think that is so important, the perceptions of ourselves as well, and really owning your space, taking that human people first approach to the work, because you're not only a strategic partner, you are also an employee and a team member of the organization, experiencing the culture. Can you give an example of what it means to really take that human first people approach and talent, and what that looks like in practice?
We do it every day. So picking a great example is it's both fun and challenging, but I will take I think one of the things that I think of so much was the pandemic. And when the pandemic first hit, you may or may not remember that we were not sure what would happen. Not only personally, not only were we wondering, how long we would be indoors or whether we would die from a disease, we were also worried from a business perspective of what would it mean to the economy. For our business, we talked about, is it a V recovery? Is it a U recovery? There were all these different letters that signified what the recovery might look like, if at all. And so we were confused. What do we do? We had an overhead of people that were really important to us, And, we had financial pressures just like pretty much all of the businesses. So we had to make a very intentional decision about what we did. And what we said is, we're going to commit ourselves to people. We are going to do everything we can to hold on to every single person. And it was not easy. It did pay off, but we didn't know it was going to pay off. We just said, if we're going to be a human first company, we cannot impact people's lives at this time in our macroeconomics. We have to stay committed to people. And so we did that in lots of different ways, which, I could talk about, but really that business decision, when we talk about being living proof that you can win in business while being human first, which by the way is our purpose, that is tough when you're in that kind of a situation, because you want to win in business, but not at the expense of people, but you have to have a business to employ the people. So that kind of a decision tree was really tough. And I'm really proud of where we came out on that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that definitely answers my question.
Yeah.
It should be something that is seen and manifested throughout the organization, and especially in rough times, in really challenging, nobody knows what's going to happen, how you react and also have meaningful conversations with people in an intentional way is really important.
Yes.
And now that we're at a time where a lot of folks are looking for really purpose-driven work, places where people are put at the forefront, which is really great. You shared that you're innovating and being really intentional about hiring folks. What strategies are you encouraging your team to really lean into, especially since we've heard a lot of companies say like they're hiring like gangbusters and, refer all the people that you can and hire.
Mm-hmm. Hire. There's some strategies that we have about how to hire better and faster. And then there's strategies which we have that ensure that we have a connection to people through what can be a transactional process. So on the side of some of our strategies, we've really identified what are the key roles in the company that we have to be really great at hiring. You have one-off jobs like, a compensation manager. Is it important? It is. But do you have a pipeline of people for compensation? Probably not. However, when you're hiring a software designer, or you're hiring a product manager, or you're hiring an account manager, these are jobs that you should be really good at hiring and that you hire a lot of. So what we've done is focused on the key roles. We've identified them and focused on them. And our sourcing efforts are very strong and heavy for those roles. So instead of using sourcing for, say, the hard to fill roles, we've kind of flipped it and said, let's use sourcing for the jobs that we fill the most so that we can have as full a pipeline as possible. And, the impossible dream is that we have a 0-day to hire. And, we probably will never get there, but we like to think big. And that's one of our goals. And you could do it if you've got the right pipeline for the most key jobs.
Absolutely.
As far as having the heart, our recruiting team, globally is just, I've never been really so proud of a recruiting team because they do their job and they do it well and all that, but they really bring their whole selves into the recruiting process, and they connect with people in a way that must be very meaningful because I get so much unsolicited input and praise, and people say they really felt like they were treated human first. And I get this from people that have been declined as much as people that have joined. And that to me it's almost more important than how many people we hire. It's that we create a great experience for the people that we talk to. So.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks volumes as well when you're receiving that feedback from people who are joining the team, just from people who are engaging with people at the organization and on the Gainsight team as well. You mentioned kind of the global aspect on Reimagining Company Culture. We talked to a lot of leaders that have that global presence. And I think it's always a question of how do you really ensure that the things that we're talking about here are really not only US centric, but the strategies and programs are thought about on that global scale. Can you provide any examples of programs that don't have that Western lens and really think about local as well as global?
Yeah, this is something that's near and dear to our hearts because when we were founded, we were not founded as a US company. we had the product development in Hyderabad with one of our founders, and the go-to-market, if you will, in the US in St. Louis, Missouri, not even Silicon Valley. Um, and so those two founders were kind of like the head and the heart of the company. And so we started as a global company, which gives us a little bit of an advantage, but it doesn't solve all of the problems because we still are we're separated by, especially between India and the US, we're separated by 13 and a half hours West Coast to Hyderabad on any given day. And that time zone difference really challenges us with collaboration. So we are very purposeful and intentional about keeping things as connected as we can. So not that this is an example, but I mean, I have meetings from 6 a.m. and I start my job at 6 a.m. so that I could be connecting with people regardless of time zone all day long. But when you think about some of our programs, we do almost all of our major programs globally. So for example, we just finished our annual review cycle, which we call Human First Coaching. And we designed it, and we had a completely global team designing the process. And we chose a while, but we chose what's local and has input from local, and what's global because it's about our values and our business strategy and so on. And we did that from the design phase. So it was like design thinking that we thought globally right from the beginning. And I can say that we were really pretty successful. I mean, we've been doing this a while, and we've tripped enough times to kind of know where the landmines are. But it's hard, but we do it. It's just about just putting the time in and the effort and caring enough to take the time to do it. And we actually have many programs where we roll them out, for example, in India first. And we've done that again intentionally so that we're not only designing for that audience, but we're testing it on that audience and bringing it to them first. And again, it's a little thing, but it changes the rubric a little bit, and we get a lot better feedback. And it's just a way for us to be on our toes and make sure that we are a connected global team.
Yeah, I appreciate that point around design thinking, really being intentional with the frameworks,
Yeah.
and especially with performance reviews and the common language used
Oh,
and
yeah.
rooted in values, so important. And you mentioned feedback as well as part of that system of
Yeah.
improvement and also innovation, which over the past few years, a lot of people have leaned into as well. Is there a
Yeah.
piece of feedback from your global team that really surprised you or informed a change to the business?
There are several. I think I don't know. This is probably another little one, but I think the time zone issue is a big deal. And so what we've done is, I mean, we had people that would come into the company, they were new with the company, and they would, have counterparts in India or part of their team in India. And the thing was, I work from 9 to 5, you need to fit into my time zone. And that just doesn't work. So we are very, very clear that we need to work around India. India doesn't work around us. And what we heard over and over again is, number one, they're tired. Like, hey, you people in the US, you got us up early, you got us, up late, and you make a choice. So we do, it's just a matter of not policy, but practice, that we always check in to find out what times are good. So I have a team that, I don't know, I have about 10 people that work for me in India, and I make sure that I understand what their preference is. Now, luckily, their preference is that they like night and I like morning. That all works well, but that's not true across the board. And we adapt to the time needs of our Indian partners and counterparts. We also, one thing that I've learned recently is when you have blended teams, there is a tendency, I've seen this more, it's more from an organizational design and it's organizational behavior, but there's almost a tendency to expect the Indian teammates to be led, if you will, by the US. And when we started hearing that it felt like that for people, I mean, in HR and in the leadership, it was like, screw, we got to stop that, because that just doesn't, it's not part of our values, and it's really not cool.
Yeah.
So we have been very careful to make sure that we empower leaders that are managing in India, so that they aren't in any way overshadowed by counterparts in the US. But that was a real surprise. I hadn't realized that people felt that way. And once I realized it, and I don't say just me, this is not just me, but once I and others realized it, we took it to heart, and we were surprised, but we took it to heart.
Absolutely. And that organizational design in meetings, whether you can kind of provide feedback from your manager, is super important, and doesn't just happen as well. It's really cultivating that space to make sure that people feel like they are empowered and that they can do their best work as well. And I think time zones is really important. It's a great example. I was just at a conference, and one of the major questions was around asynchronous work and when is the golden hour for meetings, especially on a global basis. There's many hours time difference. Time is your most valuable resource, so what you do today impacts what people are doing tomorrow. So it is a big question as well, and really having a conversation, respecting each other's kind of times of working is really important as well. And part of this too, in terms of respecting people's time, is making sure that you are retaining your folks in a really active way, and knowing there's no playbook for retention, even though we wish there was. When you're thinking about your retention strategy on a global scale, what really also needs to stay local?
It's very different. We all talk about there being a hot market, and we've had times, in the past where there's been hot markets. So it's not that that's a new phenomenon, but it is different in different locations. So even in the US, it's a little hotter in California than it is in, some other states. I won't pick on any particular state. So you have to be aware that even, in the US, the markets are different. But the market in India in general, I mean, I think you probably know this, it's different and hotter than it's ever been. So when we think about retention, it is very challenging, because we have a very high engagement rate. I should back up and say, I almost never care about retention. So I don't talk about it. I talk about it as little as possible, and I try to change the narrative to talk about how we engage people and, make Gainsight a place where people just can't stand to leave. And if they do, they're part of our alumni, they're part of our kind of our community forever. We call it Gainster for life. So, so I don't like to really focus on retention, but it is so necessary, because we would, if we didn't focus on it, we might be surprised to find that, we wake up and, a third of our workforce is gone. So we do care. And we've really had to pay attention to salaries. We've had to pay attention to, what's your total compensation? Because the total compensation packages have been so astronomical that we have had to decide, what are we going to do about that? And by the way, we've decided we can't compete. We can't give people double salaries. And we just can't do it. That's what, we have people that, they go and they get an offer and they show it to us and they're like, man, this is double. So we kind of have said, we're okay with, not competing on an individual by individual level. But what we do is make sure that our pay practices are super, super monitored. So we don't just look at what does the survey says? What does the survey say? But we're also getting a lot of real-time information from partners out in the industry, from our recruiters, and just trying to keep our comp information fresh. And really, it's tough, but I think we've been pretty successful. And the thing is that even when people leave, they're like, I love this. It's amazing. You read, I'll read the verbatims from the exit interviews, and people love Gainsight, and they're like, I hate to leave. I don't want to leave. And we're like, it's okay because you're still part of Gainsight. You're part of Gainster for life. And we have people that come back, and that's fine. And, we try to make it a learning experience for everyone and try to kind of take the drama out of it too.
Absolutely. I appreciate the thought behind kind of being a gangster for life as well. It's like it's a very special time in your career too. And I think that is really important to remember from the time you interview to the time you exit the
Yeah.
organization as well. And I think that there's been a lot of changes to how we engage with our workplace, what we expect from managers, leaders. And it's really hard in a remote or hybrid setting too, and to think about kind of key pillars of how we engage employees, that psychological
Yeah.
safety as well. What are those key pillars of a sustainable way to really set up your remote workplace to have that psychological safety, as we were talking about organizationally, like the team dynamics and things like that?
So, as far as how it relates to remote workplace, I can't say we've done enough work on that. We actually have a project that we're working on called Future of Work, which isn't exactly a super creative, brilliant phrase because we're all talking about it. But looking at or reimagining, as you would say, reimagining what the workplace looks like and how we operate differently because of it is certainly part of what we do and what we're about. But when I think of psychological safety, it for us at Gainsight, it has a meaning that is um, that spans how you deal with a remote workforce and how you create engagement with people who are not working or not co-located. We actually talk about psychological safety a lot, and it's one of the pillars of our management training. So we have Human First Leadership, which is our own homegrown leadership development or leadership development effort. And it was kind of based loosely on the book called Positive Intelligence, which really is about how you bring psychological safety into the workplace, and what that means and how that positive intelligence actually raises up a workforce rather than pushes it forward. It's kind of like push pull, right? So we do talk about psychological safety a lot, and we hold managers accountable to our human first purpose. And I won't get into all the different tools, but we have lots of tools that we teach that are there to help managers lean into this a little bit and have some skills to be able to open up and be more safe. We are particularly maybe special or lucky because our CEO is I hate to sound like a fan. I'm kind of like a fan, but I don't let him know that. But he really, truly lives this human first stuff. Like it isn't just, a thing for him. This is why he comes to work every day. He models this psychological safety. You will never see him ever, even if I'm sure he's irritated half the time. I don't know, but he doesn't show it. He always keeps an individual in his sight and treats them with respect and dignity, may give them feedback, but does it in a very gentle and loving way. And because of that, it sets a tone in the company. So, assholes aren't allowed. It just isn't okay. So I think, when you talk about psychological safety, you could teach it, you could say you believe in it, but when you model it from the top down, that's nirvana. I mean, that is like it makes my job so easy and so fun because we know that we have to bring our best, everybody says bring your whole self to work. We have to bring our best self to work. That is the expectation. So I think when you do that, safety kind of is the outcome.
Absolutely. That modeling behavior from executive leadership, from the CEO, that is so important, and it reinforces the company values. It shows kind of what behavior is rewarded, what you really strive for as well, and making sure that people feel seen, heard, understood is really the goal. And it's a continuous process. At the time of our kind of episode launch as well, we are approaching June of 2022. Can't believe we're already there. And I would love to ask how Gainsight is honoring and celebrating Pride this year, recognizing that this is not siloed into a month, and
Right.
supporting LGBTQIA plus employees is a 365-day year effort.
Yes. So the short answer is I'm not sure. We have we call them TRGs, teammate resource groups, and we have a few teammate resource groups. And in teammate success, we partner with those resource groups to help. Actually, we try to support them to create content and programming that is relevant and interesting, because God knows the employees have better ideas than I personally do. So we use our teammates to actually help determine the programming. And right now they're actually, I could see on the we call our TRG spectrum, and on the spectrum channel, they're going back and forth about what they want to do. So I'm not exactly sure, but what I do know is this: for example, Black History Month, or for International Women's Month, or I think it's Women's Month and International Women's Day, what we did was the TRGs got together, and not just, for example, the BIPOC TRG for Black History Month, or the we call it Elevate for the women TRG. We actually get all the TRGs involved in creating the program for that month. So Spectrum may lead it for Pride, but the other TRGs will get involved in doing the programming. So it's one company as opposed to just a faction of the company. And I really love that. It kind of happened by accident instead of on purpose, but it has been so powerful. We had Mind Matters. We had a whole wellness session, and all the TRGs got involved with wellness from their perspective. And really the programming was, I thought it was off the charts. I thought it was awesome. So I don't know what we're going to do, but they'll figure it out. And we really value our TRGs, and we're continually trying to kind of up the game in how we, as a teammate success team, listen and absorb their feedback so that we can improve what we're doing. And to that end, you didn't specifically ask me this, but we just employed a consultant who is a kind of a specialist in DEI. And what we're doing is an audit. We want someone from the outside to come in and say, here are some things that you need to really focus on. Here's some, because we don't want to do everything. We want to do a few things and do those few things really well. And we find that having outside help, I think will help. One of our values is Shoshin, which is beginner's mind. And it's kind of hard to have beginner's mind when you're not a beginner. So we're bringing that beginner's mind in, and we're really, I feel like we have a way to go to realize kind of our dream of, full inclusion, full belonging. And so it's a journey for us.
Absolutely. And taking the time to invest in employees and teammates who are working on this as well, and bringing out or investing in subject matter experts as well to come in and help the organization too is really important. I appreciate you sharing kind of the different examples throughout our conversations of different programs and how you're really creating a great place to work at Gainsight and continually thinking about that. I know in our previous conversation, there have been a lot of pivots as well to just the business and the nature of the many, many challenges over the past few years. Is there a pivot that you are most proud of the company or either your team has taken over the past 12 months?
This was the year of the Great Resignation. So I get it. And, I say, oh, well, I'm not that worried about retention, but let's face it. I mean, this was a big year. And what I really appreciate is that we didn't lose the storyline. So we didn't sell out in order to be something different than we really are to try and keep people. I've been at companies where they realize people are leaving for this, so let's get a ping pong table. They want more fun, we'll get a ping pong table. Or, where you don't really hit the real issues and you stay at a surface level, and you end up losing your identity in the storyline. So I really feel proud of us for sticking with the fact that let's remember that we have to be a great place to work. What do we need to do that? more more touch points, more connection for people. Those are real things that you can do that matter, that aren't about, what kind of a salary can I offer you. We did spend quite a bit of time on our new hire orientations and kind of onboarding, so that as we brought people in, they came in so excited. I have the privilege of doing one of the onboarding sessions. We do like a week long onboarding, and I leave so excited because they're in the chat. They can't even, contain themselves. They're in the chat and they're saying, yes, I can't believe this company is really what it is, what they said it is. And oh, I love my recruiter. And they're just like gushing and gushing and gushing. And to actually take that energy and, kind of channel it and push it forward, it ends up creating the change and invigoration and energizing that you want in the workforce. And I'm really proud of the fact that our new people have been such ambassadors and kind of kept the company fresh and excited and fun.
Yeah, those intentional touch points, especially when someone joins the team, they're about to come onto
Yeah.
the team as well, is so important too when you're the new kid in school, just how people, interact with you and make you feel like part of the team. I think those are really great examples as well.
Yeah.
Carol, is there anything that I didn't ask you throughout our conversation that you'd like to share, or maybe underscoring a couple of key takeaways for our listeners to bring with them after hearing our conversation?
Well, there is something that we're in the process of doing that I think is exciting. So I'll tell you the phrase that just has always bugged me for my career, my whole
Yes.
career, and that's the phrase performance management. I hate
Okay.
that phrase.
Right.
It makes me feel like I'm, some sort of an animal that needs to be trained.
Yeah.
I just hate it. So, you're managing the performance, sit, lay down, hate it. So it's just a phrase, but we don't use the phrase performance management. And this year, what we've done is kind of rebranded I told you we just went through our review process, and we rebranded it Human First Coaching. And what we've set up is this whole idea of it's a cycle. There's a human first coaching cycle. It begins with your goals and it continues through the year with a certain amount of, there's the traditional one-on-ones, there's the quarterly check-ins, there's the development goals, and that this coaching happens throughout the year, and then it culminates in a 1 year look back where you can say, look at what we've done, look at how look at what we've achieved, and that you then regroup and say, okay, this is what I did, and now it's time to re-look forward, and what are my goals, and what's my growth edge, what do I want to improve, and you work with your manager on that so that you're co-creating a future. And it's just, look, we're not 100% there. I'm not going to say, oh, we've got it, but we're putting a lot of energy and emotional energy behind it, so that we're not just talking about it, like it's not just a bunch of talk, but we're trying to demonstrate it. And I don't know, we'll see if it's successful, but I just put my foot down and I said, I can't say performance management one more time. And I think human first coaching sounds so much better, don't you?
It sounds so much better. And now I'm always going to think of performance management as just like train, and just like not the word we use. So I'm here for it.
Yeah.
The language that we use is also really important. So I appreciate
you
sharing that as well. And just to get our mindset into what does this word actually mean. So I think that's a better word and also definition. Carol, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Thank you. It's been really fun.
Of course, and as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood, and know it's a requirement for the business to succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.